Namaste, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Sacred Space with me, your host, Preetha Lal, as we spend time reading the book Eternal Values for a Changing Society by the late Srimad Swami Ranganathananda ji. As you are aware, if you're following this podcast, the Swami was the 13th president of the Ramakrishna Matan mission, but he was also so much more. He was a scholar par excellence, a spiritual ambassador, a philosopher, and a teacher. This multi-volume treatise that I have decided to read to you through this podcast is a testament to the breadth of his knowledge and the depth of his immense wisdom. As you are aware, we are reading the chapter on the spiritual life of the Indian people, and we have been doing this in 3 parts. Today, we conclude this chapter with a reading of the Swami's analysis on Shiva, Budhha, and a beautiful analogy of Shakti in the context of the kinship with the Japanese gods or kami. Swami Ranganathananda's ability to take concepts of diverse philosophy and then draw parallels and perspectives with various other philosophies is something that uniquely distinguishes him from many of his contemporary and erudite stalwarts. Let us begin. Shiva and Budhha. The worship of Shiva seems to have been the most ancient of the worships in India, with the exception of Shakti, the mother goddess. Shiva is conceived as the god of the yogins, men of contemplation. He is the ascetic god with the snowy Himalayas as his natural abode. He represents the state of Bodhi, the state of illumination attained by Buddha, the soul enjoying the beatitude of its own divine nature. But Shiva is also compassionate. The word Shiva in Sanskrit means auspiciousness, goodness, and he comes down from his state of divine absorption to bless a seeking aspirant or redeem a soul in distress. Shiva is thus a state as well as a deity, the latter as a symbol of the former. He is also the special god of Indian monasticism. The close kinship of this concept of Shiva to Buddha and his religion made for the blending of the two in several aspects in the later evolution of Buddhism. Shiva and Shakti. The worship of Shiva is marked by a spirit of seriousness and austerity. This worship is closely allied to the worship of Shakti, the divine mother known as Kali, Durga, and so forth. In the symbolic language of popular Hinduism, Shakti is the wife of Shiva, and both are looked upon as the parents of the whole universe. This idea of Shiva and Shakti as the father and mother of the universe has inspired poets and philosophers, artists and mystics, saints and devotees in India for hundreds of years. The great poet Kalidas sang in praise of them in the opening verse of the epic poem Raghuvamsam. And he said, "Inseparable as word and its meaning are Shiva, the Supreme Lord, and Parvati, the Divine Mother, whose grace I seek for culturing the soul of language." Parvati literally means the daughter of the mountain, the Himalayas. Her 2 other names, Durga and Gauri, also derive from her association with the mountain. The marriage of Shiva and Parvati, or Shakti, is the symbol of the union of the immobile absolute and the mobile creative energy, the potential and the kinetic states of total energy, physical and spiritual, of the universe. The two are ever inseparable. This marriage is the theme of another long epic poem of Kalidas known as Kumara Sambhavam, or the birth of the heroic child. Shakti stands for the unity of the energies of Mother Nature in all her aspects, physical, biological, mental, and spiritual, and represents a generalization of the energies of nature far beyond what physical science gives today. Shakti is the unity of the physical and non-physical energies of nature. It is termed Chit Shakti, the energy of consciousness, out of which the whole world of conscious and unconscious entities proceed. It is viewed in the feminine and conceived not as creating the world from the outside, but as giving birth to the world from within itself. So it is the divine mother of all, as Shiva is the divine father of all. Both form an inseparable unity, 2 aspects of the same reality, the unity of becoming and being. Buddha experiencing the immobile state of Bodhi, Nirvana, represents the Shiva aspect, and Budhha engaged in active public ministration represents the Shakti aspect. Indian Shakti versus Japanese Kami. This concept of Shakti and its association with the mountains, you will mark, brings it into close kinship with Kami, the gods of Japanese religion. Specifically with the chief Kami, Amaterasu Omikami. But the Japanese Kami concept has not received that treatment from philosophy as the Indian Shakti concept received from the philosophy of Vedanta. This philosophic nourishment of the Shakti concept has raised the Kami cults of India to the highest levels of philosophic mysticism of the most active type. Shakti is the favorite deity not only of contemplatives and pious devotees but also of warriors and men of action. This concept of worship, as it has evolved during these several centuries, and especially during the dynamic orientation that it received in the hands of Sri Ramakrishna in our own time, is winning its way to the hearts of millions of people today in view of its capacity to bridge the gulf between the demands of active social ethics and passive contemplation, between reason and faith, and between knowledge of the world and knowledge of God. Spiritual life, the 3 stages. India discerns 3 stages in the expression of the human being's spiritual life. In the first stage, a person's religious impulse seeks to find expression in outward acts of worship and adoration. His God is outside. He resorts to temples and churches, images and symbols, hymns and songs, fasting and pilgrimage. This is the first stage of every religion, the effort to capture an intimation of the eternal through the concrete and the gross. The discipline of this stage must lead the devotee onto the second stage, that of inward contemplation. He has now learned to feel the presence of God within and close. In this, there is very little of the external expression. There is very little of the noise and show associated with the first phase. In fact, true religion begins only at this stage. The first one is treated as just the kindergarten of religion. When the heart becomes purer and purer, it is able to experience the pull of the divine within. The religion then becomes a joyous communion of the soul with God. The practice of meditation becomes a delight. Continued practice of this stage draws down the grace of the divine. And the soul enters the third stage in which it achieves the fullness of realization. The seeker sees God within, in contemplation, and also without in the field of action. India considers this as the aim of all spiritual striving. Every devotee in India places this as his or her final spiritual objective. But he or she knows that it is difficult to achieve in a single life, though it will surely be achieved someday. Shri Krishna says in the Gita, in chapter 7, verse 3, out of thousands of people, only a few strive for perfection, and out of thousands that so strive, only a few realize the truth of my true being. Again, in chapter 7, verse 19, Shri Krishna says, striving through several births, the wise one realizes me as existing in every being. Such a Mahatman, or a great soul, is rare to come across. Japa and Dhyana. With the knowledge of the above stages in view, the worshipper in India not only engages in external ritual worship, but also practices dhyana or inward meditation, aided by japa or repetition of the divine name. This repetition of the divine name is a universal practice in the Bhakti religions of India. It is also prevalent in some form in all religions of the world. This japa and dhyana are the central core of the spiritual practices of the Indian people. The devotee chooses a particular form of God or incarnation as his favorite object of adoration, his Ishtadevata. India allows perfect freedom of choice in this matter, as the people are taught by Vedanta that the supreme truth is one, though called by various names and conceived under various forms for the facility of comprehension and approach. In modern times, through the benign influence of Sri Ramakrishna, who had realized God through both Hindu and non-Hindu forms of adoration, this choice of object of adoration, which was still now confined to the various deities and incarnations of the specifically Hindu religions, is being extended to Christ and Buddha as well, who also are viewed as incarnations of God, just like Rama and Krishna. Pilgrimages. Pilgrimages occupy an important place in the spiritual life of India. India's important holy places are scattered over its length and breadth. Some of the holiest are in the interior of the Himalayas, including the holy Mount Kailas, the abode of Shiva in Tibet, holy to Hindus and Tibetan Buddhists alike. At the southern extremity of India are the temples of Rameshwaram and Kanyakumari. The two other important centers are Dwarka and Puri on the western and eastern seaboards of India, respectively. The sacredness of Ganga. A special object of reverence in India is the river Ganga, whose water is treated as a symbol of God Himself. No river in the world is treated with such reverence as the Ganga in India, and this from pre-Buddhistic times. Millions of Hindus bathe in it every year and carry its water in brass pots and jars to their homes, even to foreign countries, to sip a few drops every day or on special occasions. A few drops of the sacred water of the Ganga are put into the mouth of dying persons by their relatives. On its banks, thousands of people practice meditation and austerity, getting the stimulation of this holy atmosphere. The Ganga, with its sacredness, has been carried to Ceylon and Southeast Asia in the wake of the Indian culture. In some of these countries, every river is known as Ganga. It is conceived as the river of heaven brought down to earth by a great emperor of ancient India, Bhagirath. This historic mystical episode has formed the theme of much literature and art. The river fell from heaven on the matted hair of Shiva, who was then absorbed in contemplation on the snowy peaks of the Himalayas and then flowed down in the winding streams through the tortuous mountain valleys, eventually to enter the plains at Haridwar, an ancient holy pilgrim center about 120 miles north of Delhi, to become the great river of material and spiritual prosperity for India. Bhagirath had to undergo infinite troubles and austerities before he had the satisfaction of seeing the river flow into plains. And the name of Bhagirath in Indian culture now stands for all energetic and holy endeavors for the good of the people, just like Prometheus in Greek culture. Indian monasticism. Before I close, I would like to say a few words about Indian monastic life, which is such a significant expression of the Indian spiritual life. An institution with hoary antiquity and prestige, it was ancient and well established even at the time of Budhha, who became one of its greatest representatives. The sannyasin or the monk, in virtue of his total renunciation and emancipation from personal and social bonds, is given divine veneration in India. And the best representatives of this holy order fully deserve this national reverence. Buddha, Shankara, Chaitanya, Ramakrishna, and Vivekananda belong to an unbroken line of monastic tradition which goes back to Shuka, Yajnavalkya, and Sanat Kumara in prehistoric ages. In several monastic orders, the monastic initiation is preceded by a homa, or goma in Japanese, the fire ceremony, in which the candidate who is a celibate from birth or has become a celibate after a spell of the married state pours into the lighted fire, which is the symbol of the Absolute, in the form of material oblations, his desires, senses, mind, and the ego, and realizes himself as pure spirit without the touch of worldliness. He is then given a new name and a new apparel, colored with a special kind of earth to signify his death in the flesh and the birth in the spirit. Homeless and without possessions, he starts a new life of practical, direct religion, the march of the alone to the alone, and the love and service of all beings without distinction. Conclusion. India does not believe in a rigidly controlled central church to regulate religion or monasticism. When the new social order evolves into a welfare state in India, the monastic order will become a constructive force for human happiness and welfare in India and abroad, for the same clarion call of Bahujana Hitaya, Bahujana Sukhaya, for the welfare of the many, for the happiness of the many, which Buddha had sounded to inspire his order, has been sounded in this age by Swami Vivekananda to inspire the monastic life of modern India, before which he has placed the great ideals of renunciation and service. The teachings of Swami Vivekananda and of his great master, Sri Ramakrishna, are the most dynamic spiritual forces in modern India, helping her people, both lay and monastic, to evolve a new form of spiritual life adequate to the aspirations and purposes of the modern world. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and presence here as we conclude this section and the final part of this series in the readings of the spiritual life of the Indian people. As you would recall, as I mentioned in the previous episode, this lecture was delivered at the Tokyo University in Japan by Swami Viranganathananda on September 30th, 1958, and at the Naprostek Museum Hall in Prague, Czechoslovakia on June 23rd, 1961. In the next episode, we will read a new chapter where the Swami talks about the path of devotion in Indian spirituality. This chapter is titled Srimad Bhagavata, on the central theme of the Bhakti Upasana. I look forward to sharing and learning more on the significant aspect and the eternal values. Until next time, this is your host, Preetha Lal. Namaste.